a Ferrari.
Oh no, there's a Ferrari going very slowly and it's Charles Leclerc. What's happened?
Although they had one of the worst starting weekends in their history, Ferrari seems very happy about the upcoming race, which will happen on the 19th of February in Jeddah.
Max Verstappen wins the Bahrain Grand Prix, and he wins it by a long way.
While Red Bull seemed unstoppable in Bahrain, that will likely not be the scenario in Saudi Arabia, with the Maranello team expecting a very solid performance and taking the battle straight to Red Bull's porch. More on that later, but before we get into the video, we'd like to let you know that we're doing a giveaway when we reach 1,000 subscribers. It's going to be a $100 gift card to the Formula One store online. To enter, you just need to subscribe and comment on each video until we reach 1,000 subscribers. Now, let's get on with the video.
It's taken him 10 attempts for Max Verstappen. Finally a race winner in Bahrain.
The first race of the season didn't disappoint if you're a Red Bull fan. However, that couldn't be said for Ferrari fans, with Leclerc suffering reliability issues and Sainz being passed by the Aston Martin of Alonso and eventually dropping off the podium.
Alonso is up into third place. Carlos Sainz couldn't hold on to that podium place any longer.
Even when Leclerc was in the race, it was evident that they didn't have the pace to fight with Red Bull. But this is poised to change in the upcoming period. Now, one of the reasons why Leclerc and Sainz weren't able to compete with the cars of Red Bull ahead is that the asphalt of the Bahrain circuit is one that hasn't been changed in so long a time.
The Desert Spectacular begins with Michael straight on the pace.
Ever since the track was introduced to the calendar all the way back in 2004, the asphalt remained the same, and this means that the cars that tend to struggle with tyre degradation will have their underlying issues aggravated by the nature of the track. If there is one thing that we can say about Ferrari, it's that their tyre degradation is one of their biggest enemies on the track, and that's been shown yet again in Bahrain. The abrasive surface in Bahrain meant that the cars that had better downforce out of the ground effect cars were able to preserve their tyres for a longer amount of time. Such was the case with Red Bull and the RB19.
And it is the hard tyre that he goes on to. Wow, that's brave based on how it's been going with everybody else.
We don't have to go far back in history to remember how Ferrari was hindered by their tyre degradation issues, ones that kept them so far from victories in 2022. In Budapest, the team went from P2 and P3 to being pushed down the grid in a combination with the wrong tyre strategy and high degradation.
All the stories are being written for tomorrow about Ferrari's strategy again.
The only time where the team was able to absolutely destroy Red Bull in this manner was on the Austrian team's home court in Spielberg, where Sainz and Leclerc were able to double down on the time that Verstappen spent on the same tyre compound.
Charles Leclerc back in front of Max Verstappen.
In order for us to understand why Ferrari will be stronger in Jeddah and Melbourne, the next two tracks on the calendar, we need to compare how tracks like Bahrain, which is very different compared to the next two races, suited the RB19 more than the SF23.
It's Max Verstappen with pole number 21 that takes qualifying in Bahrain tonight.
The qualifying lap difference was something that was a bit hard to understand, mostly because the SF23, which is the name of the 2023 Ferrari Challenger, was faster in sectors that weren't that positive for the Maranello team back in 2022, such as straight line speed. But at the Bahrain GP 2023, Leclerc was able to catch up a lot of time compared to Verstappen in sections like the exit of turn 10 and down the straight into turn 11. But the time that Verstappen was able to make up in the tricky turn 10 and in the medium and high speed corners is something that doesn't compare with Ferrari, and the turn 7 and 12 were mostly dominated by the two-time world champion. So how does the high downforce car of Red Bull help Verstappen and Perez gain time throughout these corners? Well, it's simple. The car is much more stable, which helps the drivers navigate it with more precision, or simply put, they're able to brake later and accelerate earlier. Verstappen's acceleration as he exited turn 14 was 6 km per hour faster than Leclerc's, and even though Leclerc is able to diminish this by achieving top speed faster than Verstappen, topping the Dutchman by 3 km per hour more, the advantage that Verstappen gains through the corner is too much to handle for the SF23. The top speed of Leclerc was 298 km per hour, something that wasn't the case in 2022, where on tracks like Miami, Verstappen was able to be faster up to 30 km/h compared to Leclerc. Now, Ferrari is the team that's fastest on the straight, and this is exactly what the following two tracks are mostly composed of: straight lines and corners that are basically entered with full throttle. Furthermore, the Jeddah track is practically new, as it debuted back in 2021, and the Melbourne asphalt has been reconstructed recently, so the abrasion and the tyre degradation are something that won't present an issue for teams like Ferrari and Mercedes. If this turns out to be the truth, then we're going to see a weaker Aston Martin as well, with a UK-based team having a car that is more or less the same as the 2022 championship winning one, the RB18. This is something that is well known to Red Bull as well, with Verstappen having low chances that the dominance he and his teammate were able to represent in Bahrain is going to be repeated in Jeddah and Melbourne as well. When talking about this matter, he remained humble as he went on to add, "Saudi is quite a different track to Bahrain. You have a lot more straight, fast corners and a lot less degradation. I think here we were particularly good on the deg, so I do expect in terms of race pace that everyone is closer in Jeddah. Jeddah is going to be quite different again. Our car seems quite strong in high speed, but I think Ferrari is quite quick on the straight, which in Jeddah of course is very nice to have. Time will tell. It's really hard to know. We've only really driven these cars in Bahrain, so we just have to wait and see." On the other hand, Ferrari also expects that the following race in Jeddah will suit them better compared to what they showed to the world in Bahrain, and that's why the team principal of Ferrari, Frédéric Vasseur, has spoken highly of the team's hopes in terms of qualifying and finishing the race in a strong position. One thing that he emphasised the most is the one-lap pace, something that will desperately need to go in Ferrari's favour if they want to have the upper hand compared to Red Bull during Sunday's race. Now, one attribute about Jeddah is that the track itself will put a more balanced load on the front tyres, meaning that the rear tyres won't be as overloaded as they were in Bahrain. And when you compare this with the different and smoother surface of the asphalt, then Ferrari will have a lot to look for in the upcoming race weekend. Keep in mind that the downforce requirement is much lower in the following two race weekends, so don't be surprised if you see Mercedes in the mix of the top three now that their car is not suffering from porpoising as it did last year.
It's a perfect start for Red Bull. They qualify 1-2, they finish 1-2.
At this point, we couldn't help but wonder whether Russell's statement that the RB19 is going to win every race of the season has been a bit of a far-fetched scenario, and given the nature of the upcoming race in Jeddah, there is definitely a chance that either Ferrari or Mercedes can mess up the pecking order and deliver a killer performance to win the Saudi Arabian GP. As for Ferrari, there is a slight chance that Leclerc will have to undergo a grid penalty due to the fact that he's used all of the limits of the electronic control unit and the battery, as they had to be replaced during a usual diagnostic check. Furthermore, they have failed the monogas to the point of the car actually not being able to finish the race. So if he opts out for new items in the pole, then he'll drop 10 places down the grid for the first time the car is geared up with these parts, and 5 places down the grid for every other change down the calendar.
No, come on. What happened, guys? No power.
It's definitely something that Ferrari doesn't want to witness so early in the season, and the fact that Leclerc wasn't able to finish the first race only goes to show that while the tracks are going to favour the SF23, the reliability issues are definitely persistent. Therefore, they need to be fixed as soon as possible, and Leclerc needs to have optimal machinery in his hands if he wants to go on and challenge the Flying Dutchman ahead. With that being said, what do you think about Leclerc's chances of taking the battle up to Verstappen's neck? Do you think that Ferrari is poised to win the Saudi GP? Let us know in the comments down below.